Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for this another Sunday, Easter Sunday, just to celebrate so many things, celebrate life, celebrate our messages from Jesus Christ that taught us so much about life, life as a spirit, and celebrating this beautiful moment of renovation in our lives. And today, as this part of our celebration, we're going to have Rafael talking to us about the lessons from Peter to Paul. And as we always do on a Sunday, we're going to start by having our initial prayers, and we're gonna start right after that with our lecture from Rafael. So for everyone that's joined us now, I can see some of our usual members and viewers coming in. Thank you all for coming and joining us. It's really that's the reason why we're here. So thank you all for the support. So let us get started with our initial prayer. So, dear Father, Mother God, and our Master Jesus, thank you for this opportunity that we have of being here today in this beautiful Easter Sunday, celebrating life, celebrating the lessons from Jesus with our families, this beautiful renovation of spring that brings us to us every year, the power and the beauty of nature. Let us take that in our lives and fill our hearts with the blessings that come from above. And we also ask for blessings for Rafael, our speaker, and every one of us that are listening to this lecture now or recorded later. May we all learn and may we all continue to implement this in our lives. Thank you, and so be it. All right, everyone. So now we're gonna, without further ado, let's start with Rafael in our lecture today, and then we're gonna have some question and answer period at the end. Okay? Thank you, everyone. Rafael, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Hey, everybody. Good morning. So we are back online, and I wish you all a happy Easter. So the theme of the lecture today is, in my opinion, a very important lesson that it was delivered from Peter, Saint Peter, to Saint Paul, as we call in Catholicism, or how their names are normally known. I'll refer to them as just Peter and Paul. And it's directly related to the holiday that we're going through as Christians, which is, it's a very important celebration for us as we remember this spirit, this friend, master and guide, whatever concept we want to apply to identify him. But this spirit of love that decided to come among us 20 centuries ago. He decided to materialize, to show himself, because he was always with us since the beginning of our evolution here on this planet. And he taught us so many things, love, justice, charity, but above all, he taught us how to be free, how to free ourselves from the burden of concentrating only on our earthly lives. We all know that there's something more. We feel it inside of us, in our hearts. And he came to show what that is. And that's why he said that he's the way, the truth. He brought all that to us. And that is what we celebrate today. And he's still a beacon of light for every Christian that strives to become a better person. And then I selected to talk about two very important apostles of Jesus, and that were directly related to the fact that we can still read his teachings and his words to this day, 20 centuries after. So without them, maybe we wouldn't know so much about Jesus' work and Jesus' teachings as we know today. And these apostles, even after their discarnation, they continued their work. They were directly involved in the Spiritist codification. So they didn't stop there at that time. But it always started there. And I want to bring that today. So these two, as I spoke before, these two apostles are Peter and Paul. And Peter, initially called Simon, so that was his name. So Peter was a name that was assigned to him by Jesus himself. That symbolizes a stone. Like Jesus saw Peter in a much deeper way that Peter saw himself. And this will become a little bit more clear as I evolve. I go further in the lecture. So then Jesus saw Peter as the stable base for the construction of Christianism. Peter didn't know that at that time. And Paul also, he was also known by another name. So he was born Saul, and he assumed the name of Paul to identify himself as a new man because he changed it completely. And his change was influenced by Peter. But there were two completely different personalities. So we can see Peter as serene, wise, a centered person. And Paul was a little bit different. Paul was full of energy. He wanted to change the world. He had this eagerness to spread Jesus' teachings, to talk to as many people as he could. And we can understand their differences if we look a little bit of their past, their upbringing, before they started working for the Church of the Way. And by the way, this is how they used to call themselves, those who work for to spread the teachings of Jesus Christ. As Jesus, as I mentioned before, he used to call himself, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." So they were the Church of the Way. Much later on, Luke, what we also call apostle, he came up with the name Christianism. But at this time, this time of this lesson that I want to talk about, they were still referring to themselves as the Church of the Way. So, speaking a little bit about their past, so that we can understand the differences in their personalities. Peter was a fisherman, so he lived a very humble life. And he was blessed by having Jesus in his house every night, discussing the gospel. There was no written gospel at that time. They hadn't written anything. It was the living gospel that was coming directly from Jesus' mouth. And we can read a lot of these details and the discussions that they had at Peter's house in the book Jesus at Home by the Spirit Neo Lucio. So we can imagine how it felt. Yeah, we can only imagine to have a discussion, to have gospel at home with Jesus himself materialized there in front of them, speaking to them. So that was the learning of Peter. He was a very humble person, but who lived with Jesus, learning from him directly. And Paul was completely different. Paul, he was raised in a city called Tarsus, which at the time it was part of a Roman province. We are talking in the first decades of after Christ, so AD. And since Tarsus was a very important port, a trade port, and there were trade routes over land that would go through it, it was a multicultural city, very modern, multicultural, very busy city. And it was very famous for its academic strength. So Tarsus was directly related. They had direct connections with Athens and Alexandria, with the library of Alexandria. So Paul was educated within this knowledge. So if we think about Eratosthenes, the director of Alexandria Library, that calculated the circumference of the earth 4 centuries before Christ. Plato, the works of Plato, Archimedes, the famous engineer and scientist, Pythagoras, the mathematician, Thales of Milet, the Ionian guy that created the concept of university, Homer and its poetry, Euclid, the father of geometry. So this was all available to Paul, at the time called Saul. So he studied all this. So his life was completely different than Peter. He was not a humble life. He was full of pride and full of virility, because he also practiced sports. So he was a completely different person. And he was brought up as a Jewish person. And he completely believed that the laws of Moses and the prophets were the truth that should take over the Roman Empire, take over the world. And he was ready to take that fight everywhere. He had this energy, as I said before, this eagerness, and he wanted to change the world. The difference is, by whatever means necessary. If he had to kill for it, he would, and he did. But then, after, Paul continued in this path, and he actually learned about Jesus' teachings that was spreading. So we're talking around 3 centuries after Jesus' discarnation, that we celebrate now as Easter. His resurrection, better saying. So 30 years later. And so his teachings were already spreading, mostly due to the apostles. And Peter was right in the center in Jerusalem. His house was still the center of the Church of the Way. So his house was very busy with schools, gospel schools, with services to the community, to the poor, to the sick. Everything started in his house. The same model that we follow today, even in Spiritist Center. It's a model that it was developed first in his house. That's why he is Peter, the stone, the base. So then Paul started learning about Jesus' teachings, and he saw that as a threat to the law of Moses and the prophets. And he asked permission from the leaders of the temple to start persecuting Christians. And he learned about Peter. He went to Peter's house, and he offended, after listening to a speech, a lecture from Peter and Stephen. It's one of apostles that we don't hear enough. but he was also an apostle. And he offended, he became violent, and eventually he condemned Stephen to death by stoning, and which was something extremely violent. Is you put a person against a wall and you throw rocks at the person until the person dies. It's really violent. But then everything started changing inside of Paul. So we learn about the road to Damascus when he saw Jesus and he was converted. But it started before that. The teachings of Jesus started seeping through his pride and started changing him from the inside. Little by little, he started seeing that was bothering him, because he could not come up with arguments anymore. It started to change him, even if he didn't want to. Then when he was going to Damascus to find and kill Ananias, which was another person that was spreading the word of Jesus, then it is said that Jesus showed up to him as a beacon of light, and he fell off his horse and became blind, and then he was cured by Ananias himself. At that moment, he changed completely. It was not a switch. He was already changing. Jesus appeared to him when he was ready. He just needed a little push. And then after all that, he felt a lot of emotion coming with the regret. So imagine this. He carried with him the fact that he stoned to death one of the people that were spreading the word that he was now following, and that was really heavy in him. So what did he do? He went back to Peter's house. And when he was going there, he was completely vulnerable. So imagine this, it was completely heavy with regret. So it was very vulnerable. There was no pride there anymore. The pride had been completely shattered by the truth that he could now see. And he went to Peter to start his new life. Okay, I'm going to start at the beginning, at the center of all. And this now is, to me, is the first lesson from Peter to Paul. Peter received him with open arms. We read those things, but we rarely realize what that means. So this was the persecutor nightmare for all the Christians that were spreading or just talking about Christ, or just not even spreading his word, but just trying to follow his footsteps. This was the guy that had killed one of them. And even without that, Peter just, okay, come in. Or he opened the doors of his house to Paul. And then Paul remained there and saw all the people that were being treated, fed, the teachings. He started to sit and just listen to the lectures. He started living there with that community. A completely different attitude. Now he was humbled. He had been humbled by the appearance of Jesus, but more than anything, by the recognition that he did wrong. His own regret humbled him. But then he stayed there for some time, and all that energy that was part of his personality started to come back. And he started getting agitated. And now he knew the truth. And he wanted to do the same thing that he did for the laws of Moses and the prophets. He wanted to spread the word of Jesus. In the same way, doing whatever it took. And then one day, he mentioned that to Peter. He tells Peter his intention to, quotation marks, stir up the religious thought of the city, Jerusalem, defend the master's cause, and reestablish the truth in its complete form. He wanted to take over the transformation, and he thought that, okay, I can change everybody. I can go there now to the synagogue and start changing minds. I have this energy. And remember, he was a highly educated person. He had the knowledge of the time, of the science of the time, if we can call it this way, better the philosophy. He knew all the work of the thinkers of the past. And Peter, remember that Peter had a completely different personality. He lived with Jesus, and he had already been humbled by his own acts a long time before. And he had been on this road for some time. So then what he tells Paul, it's something very important. It's what will be our second lesson. But it's something really important that is universal, it's eternal. And we can follow to our life today. So I'm going to read a little bit of the paragraph from the book Paul and Stephen on page 358. Just to comment a little bit on Peter's words. So he says, answering Paul, God is providence for all of us. No one is forgotten. In order to judge the situation better, let's say that you were more fortunate than Judas. Let's say that you were personally victorious in what you have proposed to do. And let's say that you were able to attract the entire city to the master. Then what? Should you and could you answer for all who responded positively to your efforts? The truth is, you might attract them, but you could never convert them, since it would not be possible for you to attend to all of them individually. You would wind up being hated just the same. If Jesus, who could do everything in this world under the auspices of the Father, is waiting patiently for the conversion of the world, why can't we wait also? So this means is a very important lesson that I applied in my life many times. So first, what Paul was showing, that eagerness, was not news to Peter or any of the other 12 original apostles. He had seen the same thing in Judas. So if we read and we study what was Judas' intention, it was not a betrayal. What Judas wanted to do was to use his power as a merchant and his connections to spread Christianism, or the words of Jesus, to the high society of the Jewish community and Rome. He thought that Jesus could not do that. Jesus was just focused on the poor and the sick. And Judas thought that I can do better. I can get the money that they will pay for my betrayal, and then I'll bring Jesus with me, and I'll put him in front of the high politicians, the high authorities. He could not wait. And Paul was starting to feel the same way. And then what Peter was saying is, okay, what you're going to do when thousands of people show up here asking to be converted? And we can apply that today to our lives. We cannot convert anyone. We can't. We can only convert ourselves. Jesus is still waiting for our conversion all this time. So what we have to separate and to find as a balance is the fact that we are responsible to carry our own cross, our own responsibilities. We are responsible for our own change, not the change of others. And that does not negate charity or love. It's completely different. We can help others. We can and should do everything we can for others. But we have to remind ourselves that we are not responsible for their conversion. And that's what Peter was saying to Paul. As Spiritists and as Christians, since the beginning, we have an active participation in the society that we are inserted. And we should not hide our light under a bushel or under a table. We should talk about it. We should spread the word. But we should not try to convert, to assume the load of changing everybody else around us. It's different. The transformation comes from the inside. We can feed the transformation of others. We can show them the path that we follow. We can talk about our beliefs and the truth as we see it. But it's up to each one to absorb or reject what we say. And we have to be cool with that. We have to accept that. Because this is a divine right given to all of us. And that's what Peter was telling Paul. You can work to spread the word of Jesus. You can teach as he did. And we'll see, so we'll see on next Sunday when the lecture is a continuation. So it's going to tell a little bit more what Paul did, and it's going to show how he was active. But he didn't waste time trying to convince those who did not want to see. So we can do a link with the book Changing Attitudes by the Spirit Hamed, in the chapter that is titled Times of Ignorance. And in this chapter, he mentions Paul from the Acts of Apostles in the Bible, when Paul says that the times of ignorance that God overlooked. And then it also mentions in the Gospel of Luke, when Jesus says that much will be required from those who receive much. This means that we receive according to our knowledge, and the consequence of our acts is always according to our knowledge. So we all have this time of ignorance, this time that it takes for us to grow. Each one of us. We might, so if we want to compare with other spirits, we might be a little bit of ahead, or we might be a little bit behind. But it doesn't matter. We all have our own time to learn through our own efforts. And in our way, in our learning throughout this life, we go through phases of selfishness and pride before we develop great virtues. So when Paul showed up at Peter's house, Peter demonstrates this knowledge. We can just call forgiveness, but it's deeper than that. That forgiveness comes from the understanding and respect for Paul's time of ignorance. He understood that that's what Paul needed. He needed to go through whatever he went through to learn. And now he was ready. So Peter respected that. He respected that. And instead of thinking of himself and the hard feelings that he might have had towards Paul from everything that Paul did, but he decided not to. He did not attach himself to those feelings. He just respected and saw, okay, you changed. I accept you back as a brother. As a brother. Come to my house. You can come and live with me. And that, as I said before, is because Peter had his own road before Paul. If you guys remember, Peter was not always understanding. When Jesus was praying in the ortho, in that hill with olive trees, and when the servants of the temple came to arrest him, Peter got a hold of a sword and he attacked one of the soldiers, the servants, and he cut off the soldier's ear. And immediately Jesus said, Peter, this is not the way. This is not the way of the gospel. This is not what I taught you. So he grabbed the ear and then he heals the soldier and he gives himself, okay, take me. To show Peter, this is the way. So I don't want to change anybody from violence, using violence. That's not how you change anybody. So you can't change people like that. So what you do, you show your example so that people will absorb the lessons that come from you, from your words, or even more powerful, your example. People will see you, will see your actions. And those actions might trigger something inside. You never know. So Peter had his time of ignorance as well. And it didn't end there. When Jesus was crucified, Peter was asked 3 times, I saw you with Jesus. Weren't you one of his followers? No, I wasn't. You're wrong. You're mistaken. 3 times. And of course, after that moment of weakness, he realized what he had done. And after Easter, what we celebrate now as Easter, when Jesus came back, materialized, and showed himself to the apostles, then all his doubts went away. He was never doubtful again. And he focused on his mission, and then he became the Peter, the stone, the solid base for the construction of the Church of the Way. And he followed that, and he never faltered, even in the moment of his own crucifixion. He never faltered. So he remembered that. And when Paul came back, he forgave himself, so then he forgave Paul. He treated Paul in the way that Jesus had treated him, had respected his time of ignorance. And that's what he was showing and trying to show Paul. In the words of Emmanuel, the plantation is ours. We seed, we plant the seeds, but we don't harvest. The harvest is from God. All we can do is to plant seeds, is to talk about our lives, what we learn. Spiritism, Christianism, Buddhism, Hinduism. When we are in all our relationships. So I can tell that in my professional life, there are always opportunities to talk about Spiritism. But I speak as something that I believe. And when the conversation arises, I tell people what I believe, what I do. But it's different than trying to convince. I don't try to convince anybody. If someone is interested and asks for more details, I provide details. If someone has doubts and asks me questions, I answer the questions. But their conversion is not my responsibility. My responsibility is the change that I do in myself. My day to day, how to be better, which is already work enough. I don't need any more work than that. So this lesson it's as I said before, is universal. Is something that it can be, we can apply always. It's always applicable. It doesn't matter how long it has been around, it will always be applicable because it's universal. It's a universal law. And as I said before, it doesn't cancel love, justice, charity. You do whatever you want. If someone shows up in your door and in suffering and you help that person, do it. If you have the opportunity, you do it. If someone asks you about your faith, by all means, talk about it. And we have to be mindful that we talk with people to the limit that they can understand, since they in the same thing that we do for our normal professions. We don't explain every single term that we are used to it. That's not charitable. No one knows everything. So we talk to people in a way that they would understand. We use the words that they can understand. In the same way that you talk to someone that you are teaching math or science or psychology, and that person is not a professional of that area. And you leave and you let that person, you allow that person to have the divine right to agree or disagree with you. Not just about Spiritism, but about everything. About everything. Everything in the world. If we would just obey this, I can guarantee that things will be much easier throughout our civilization. It will be much easier to discuss, to debate, and we probably would arrive to answers that we all agree much faster, because we would leave this necessity to change other people out of it. We would just expose our ideas and debate without trying to change the other person or offend the other person or being offended by what that person knows or doesn't. So these, and we can see this again and again in the gospel, including the gospel according to Spiritism. chapter 24, when the spirits talk about the Gentiles. And the title is "Do Not Go to the Gentiles." The Gentiles were the non-Jewish people of the time. And in that chapter, we'll see it is written there. It is worth more to open the eyes of 100 blind persons who desire to see clearly than one person who takes pleasure in darkness. So don't lose your time. Don't try to convince. And to be honest, to have this load on your back that you absolutely has to change the world by yourself and convince everybody, it's too much. It's just gonna create anxiety, frustration, and unhappiness. Nothing good will come through it. There will be plenty of people that will ask you or will agree with you, or will, even if they disagree, there will be something that you can learn from that person and something that that person can learn from you. So if you focus on that instead of picking fights, you'll be a much happier person. I speak from personal experience. And these two apostles, both of them learn from their own experiences. They didn't stop. So of course they both were put to death by the Romans from spreading spreading Christianism. At that time was already labeled as Christianism. And 18 centuries later, Paul comes back and helps in the codification of Spiritism. We can see his teachings, his versions of Jesus' teachings in chapter 10 and chapter 15 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. In chapter 10, he talks about forgiveness, because he was forgiven himself. So he knows the value of forgiveness. And on chapter 15, he talks about without charity there is no salvation. So this is the importance of waiting for people, so respecting the times of ignorance of each one of us. The persecutor who killed Christians became an apostle, and he has been working to spread Jesus' word ever since. 2,000 years later, he's still working for it. So this lesson from Peter to Paul, if we meditate on it, if we learn from it, it will naturally leads us to forgiveness, balance in our lives, and happiness. And it's going to allow us to live a lighter life. That's all I had to bring it to you guys. So thank you very much for listening to me. And now I open for questions. I'm not sure if I can see. Okay, I see. Good morning from Joyce. I don't see any questions here, so probably there is none. Okay, I think we are good. Thank you guys for listening to me. Okay, no further comments. So then I will just finish today's time with a prayer. Jesus, our Master, our friend and our guide, Thank you for the love that you have showed to us since the moment of our creation. Thank you for the teachings that you left, both from your words and your actions. And thank you, dear mentors, family members, and those missionaries that continue working on the spiritual side to spread the word of Jesus, to spread the law of God. And we are also thankful for all the blessings in our lives, the health of our bodies, the financial support that we receive, for our friends, our family, and the love that surrounds us all. Thank you. So be it. Have a good weekend and have a good week, everybody. Thank you very much.